few months ago, I planted a couple of Venus Flytraps in here and with some sphagnum moss, and I was happy to see that a fern started growing out of the media as well as some liverwort, and it was a very nice healthy aquarium, this terrarium, and the sphagnum moss was doing really well and was lush and growing. But I had some algae developing, and I thought, let me kill the algae with drops of tea tree oil just on the algae. Big mistake. The fumes alone in the tight enclosed area decimated everything. It killed all the vegetation I had in there. So anyway, now I have a container that I can use to start a fresh terrarium from. And for this terrarium, I'm going to set it up as a plant propagation terrarium. Hence, I'm going to use this as a terrarium to which I can propagate some carnivorous plants. And to start, you want to put some peat moss in here. And the peat moss I have is, as you can see, it's quite dry. So I don't want to put it in here, then pour the water and have it just splash all over the place. So I'm going to pour some distilled water, and then I'll add the peat moss. Now, one thing to note is, if you look at the container, it comes out to a wide area, so I'm actually going to try and have the peat moss just below the top width, just so I can maximize the surface area at which I can grow things and propagate. So I can actually pour a little more water. Hopefully by using distilled water, I won't have any algae grow, but that's not going to be certain. The water that I used before was distilled, but of course I bought these two Venus Flytraps, or one that I separated into two plants. Okay, I've been trying a new way of mounting the camera and sometimes it keeps sliding. So anyway, I think the algae was probably from those that were contaminated, and this thing is still sliding, isn't it? I thought I'd try a new way to mount the camera where I would have the tripod a little further, but that didn't seem to work out that well. So anyway, I have some water in here. Now I'm going to start putting a little bit of sphagnum moss. Well, let me reword that. Sphagnum peat moss. Now by putting this in here, it will slowly soak up the water and become a nice moist substrate for the carnivorous plants that we're going to be propagating in this video. I'm gently pouring it in so I don't get any wet segments to splash up and get on the side, and then I have less to clean up that way. Sometimes the peat moss will come with twigs, so you can just eliminate those. I'll start a collection over there, I guess. Oh wow, there are a lot of twigs in this piece of, or wad of peat moss. Okay, so anyway, this will slowly, the water will slowly soak up into the peat moss, and then this will start settling to the bottom. I'm starting to run a little low in it, and I do need to buy another bag of the stuff. But we'll leave this to soak for now and go and get our cuttings while this is soaking. Here I have some carnivorous plants. I have a Dionaea muscipula, or Venus Flytrap, and this is the King Henry cultivar. It has some larger leaves than the average varieties, and then this is a Drosera spatulata, I bought these two this year, and earlier this year I bought this Akai Ryu Venus Flytrap. Now I already started taking cuttings of leaves from the spatulata. You simply take the snips and you cut the leaf. You take the leaf and then, oh, I have two, and then you can plant these. And I already started a container with some leaves in there already. Now here I have a seed tray which I cut to fit in a 2.5 gallon tank, and using a couple grow bulbs back in January I managed to propagate these, and I was successful with all the cuttings. One of them though I messed with and then it died, and it seemed to be the healthiest one, so unfortunately I killed one cutting, but they all did actually strike, and some of these I have already moved from this area. I didn't plant leaves in all of these to propagate because over here, as you can see, I have a couple sundews that I'm propagating. Let's see. Okay, it's a little too bright with the way the light's hitting, but right there's one, and here is one. It's a little faint, but you can see it. And then over here you can see a sundew forming. These were Drosera capillarises that I have a terrarium with, and I took some seeds and was successful. Then I have some live Spanish moss over here, and in the center is just a teeny weeny Cephalotus follicularis that hopefully will grow. And here's another Sarracenia, a young pitcher plant. But we're gonna now, I have enough cuttings of the Drosera spatulatas, so we're gonna work on the Venus Flytraps. I'll start with the Akai Ryu because that really could benefit from being in another pot. So here we have the Venus Flytrap, and usually even if you're not repotting, you can always pull the dead leaves out. This way they don't start molding. But you see this dead leaf? It actually has a little bit of the white tissue, so I am going to save that. I'm going to basically, this thing I tightened so it's hard to work, but cut just above the dead portion just to get it away and save that tissue. So I'm actually gonna, I moved my little pot earlier, and the screen keeps turning off, I guess because the iPhone's getting hot, so it can still continue to record. But basically you can then take this, and this plant I can actually separate into a couple. You see here, this sphagnum moss is lightly green. It's still alive, so I'm actually going to plant that in there as well. And looking over here, you can separate. A funny thing happened. My iPhone shut down because it got too hot. It's such a really hot day today. So I had to stick the iPhone in the freezer, then it was getting a lot of condensation on it. So anyway, back to the Venus Flytraps. You can separate them. And I don't know if you heard that in the background, but a wasp is coming to drink and it's making an unusual noise. So then you peel down so you can get the white stuff. And I hope I don't get stung. That wasp is uncomfortably close. Anyway, fortunately I'm not allergic, so then you can save this. So that I can put it in my container that I'll be propagating. So this is a small example. I'm not going to worry too much about taking more cuttings from that, but then here you see the bulbous portion, and you want to work with the outer one. So this one's the outer one. You bend down and you get the white stuff. Now, since you're putting it in a terrarium, no need to prune the leaf. Some people may want to prune it. It won't really dry, and usually if these start dying, they die from the top down, so you want to keep the leaf on, so as it dies, this stuff down here is still growing and producing a new plant. So I'll put this aside for propagation. Then you see, while you're doing that, you can take out the dead leaves. And this way the mother plant will be healthier and happier. And if you look here, there's even a teeny weeny Venus flytrap right there that I can grow. So I'll set that there to plant as well. Take out more dead leaves, and that's a nice thing with the dead leaves. Those you can actually still get it to grow. Some people like fresh leaves, but the ones I showed you in those seed starter trays were all from like one plant that I bought at Lowe's. You know, they had 2 or 3 little tiny ones in there, and I took as many leaves as I could. And I was successful even with the ones that were partially dying. So then here's another one that's, I'm going to try and get this big leaf and call it quits. You can see the healthy root here. And then this one actually seems to have roots attached with it already, so this one, I can probably just grow this out. Well, I'm just going to leave it attached just to be safe. Let's see, yeah, I'm just going to leave this one attached. That's interesting. I could actually break this off, get one plant, and then this I might just grow it outside. No, I'll grow it inside just to be safe, and I'll get another plant out of this. So those are the Venus Flytraps and the Drosera spatulatas. Let's see, I may take a couple fresh cuttings of the, let's see, right over here, the healthy sphagnum moss, maybe from that pot even. And then I can also have like that growing as well as the pieces I salvaged from the Venus Flytrap. I do want to get a couple of the King Henry ones too. So let me plant the Akai Ryu ones and then I'll go ahead and work on this one. The 2 bigger plants from the Akai Ryu I stuck in pure long fiber sphagnum moss, and I'm just going to leave them in the tray of water. And then the smaller one, the teeny weeny one, I stuck it in there. I have a little piece of sphagnum moss growing there, and hopefully this will grow up there next to it. And now we're going to work on this bad boy over here. So I really don't want to go ahead and uproot the whole thing. I'm going to see if I can start taking some cuttings without pulling the plant out of here. Plus it's so hot that I don't want to take it out and stay outside longer than I need to with my iPhone overheating. So far it's so good after I put it in the freezer though. So I'm going to try and grab a leaf and I'm going to push down, hoping I can break it off without pulling the thing out. And voila, I have a nice piece that I can use to propagate. So I'll stick that to propagate as well. And I don't know if you can see, but now there's a gap in here below the moss, and I can actually easily reach in for some leaves. And what you're doing is sticking your finger and pushing down to break it off. So you are getting some of the white stuff, and that's where the growth will appear from, and that's where it will root from. Oops, on this one I accidentally cut the head, no need to worry. Where is that one? Okay, here we go. And right there. And I don't know if you look, there's one strand that's growing off to the side. I want to see if I can get that piece out. Probably not, but I did break it. Actually, yeah. Okay, so here's one leaf, and you can see you have a lot of the bottom portion. And I think I can get one more from like that one there by just taking it and bending down into it. Yep. And right there. Okay, so now I have a gap here that I can just move some moss over. I do want to take a little bit of moss, and let's see, I'll probably take a little bit here, like a little pinch, and then I'll grow this in there as well. Okay, I don't know if you can see it as dark as... Okay, I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if you can see this, but I have my plants in here with a little water. And I'm going to get me a Sarracenia leaf as well to plant in there. So here I have a tub with different varieties of Sarracenia. That's some form of hybrid. I have a Sarracenia minor, and then that's a rubra over there, and then this tall one here. is a leucophylla. And this one here, if you look at the leaf, this side has more red veins than that side, but that has pink blotches, so it's an unusual leaf for a leucophylla. And because the leucophylla is exposed, I'm going to try and propagate also, in addition to the other plants, a leucophylla stem or a leaf. Now, propagating Sarracenias from cuttings is next to impossible. They take such a long time to grow, and not all varieties propagate easily or will propagate, but what I want to do is take one and peel it back. Because this rhizome's exposed, I'm doing that, but that one tore, so maybe I won't propagate a leucophylla. Let's try this leaf. Yeah, okay, there we go. So what I'm doing is peeling the leaf back. Usually you propagate these from seed or rhizome cuttings or divisions, but interesting. But by taking this piece with the section of rhizome down here, that should hopefully generate roots. And I didn't know that this was like interesting that it's split, but maybe I can get 2 separate plants from this. So I'm going to also try propagating this in there. Being in a terrarium with a humid environment, I hope it will produce and be successful. We're back to the terrarium, and it's almost completely soaked, but there is, you see how it moves? There is still water beneath it. It hasn't fully soaked in, so I don't need to add water, but I can start to press this down to make sure it gets wet, and I'm using the back ends of my hands so that I can essentially get the whole thing to be submerged, and also I'm smoothing out the top portion. So I'd rather have it a little more wet than not, because you can have a little more humid environment as you're trying to get it to root. And my iPhone's still hot from outside, so it's like the screen keeps wanting to shut off. I have to tap it before the whole video cuts off. And I can still add a little bit more here and pat it down. Okay, so let me clean my hands and we'll start adding the plants to the media. So I filled up a spray bottle so I can mist this, because I don't want to put the cuttings directly on the dry stuff so that the dry peat doesn't soak out water from them. So I have distilled water in here, and I'm just going to coat the surface of this. You want to spray gently so the breeze doesn't move the dry stuff to get onto the sides on the glass. And you can start spraying a little harder once it does get wet. But you can see it's starting to get darker on the surface. And just the surface should be fine, because then I can mist those after I place them on here. Of course, it's better to be safe than sorry, but because this is going to be a terrarium with a lid, you want to make sure it's not going to be overwatered, but as it grows, I can always take the lid, have it sealed. If it gets too humid, I can remove it for a day or two. I can always give it space to breathe as they start growing. I can even put something on here to raise this, and this way you're making sure that it's not going to be constantly overly humid, that it won't acclimate well when you take them out. Now, one interesting thing about the Sarracenia leucophylla is, if you look, it appears that there is like almost a little bit of roots on here. I don't know if that is or not. It could just be plant fiber, but it looks like I would easily be getting 2 plants from this. I'm not going to tear it all the way through, and this way I have a Siamese plant. But I am going to make a section where I can stick it in there without damaging that plant fiber. So I'm actually going to hold it from that area and stick it in here. And good thing is, this is still low enough that, okay, it is touching the top of the lid, but I'm not going to worry about it. That will hold it in place. Okay, I do have gunk on this. So now let's see, we have a King Henry, and since I have the leucophylla back there, I'm going to make this the back, so the taller plants will go in the back, which would be the Venus Flytraps, and then the sundews will go in the front. I have a bunch of stuff here. A sundew and another Venus Flytrap. I'll set them there for now. So I'm going to have the King Henrys in one area, the Akai Ryus in another. I heard this break. I may have broken it, but as long as I have part of it grow, I should be fine. And what's nice about a terrarium for propagating them is you can get so many in such a small area. Now on the other side of the Sarracenia, I'm going to stick the red ones, the Akai Ryu, at least I believe they're the Akai Ryu or red dragon or whatever you want to call that variety. So, whoops. See, the problem is because I have a lot of dry stuff, it becomes sticky. I'm going to keep that sundew there for now. But it is starting to get fully soaked, which is good. And this is the one with the roots that I plucked from outside. I'll stick this in front of the Sarracenia. I'm actually going to dig it deep enough so I can bury the roots. I'm going to hold it that way to get the roots in there. Okay, the roots are in water, and we'll see if anything emerges from there. Then right here we have some more King Henrys. Wow, I did get a lot more than I anticipated. No complaints there. Probably planting these a little too close, but I'm not worried. I'll stick that there. Maximize the terrarium. Okay, there we go. Oops. I was putting peat in the leaf. These leaves, believe it or not, will still catch bugs if you have one in the terrarium. Ooh, there's a sundew leaf. I'm going to set this aside for now. If I can. And there we go. An Akai Ryu. Whoops. See, by holding it, pushing it, and opening this a little bit, you can get it in there without damaging the tip. Okay, what else do we have in here? Let's see, another Akai Ryu. I'll set this here. Okay, here's a little piece of long fiber peat moss, or sphagnum. And then here's the other kind that was healthy growing in the pot versus that one that wasn't a healthy example. I'm going to plant this over here. And then we'll get to see how far and fast it spreads. So let's see, I think the rest I have a little bit more sphagnum moss. And okay, I'll move that to that side. Now with the Droseras, you want to make sure that the top with all the hairs is going to be sitting on top. So whoops. And these, not all of them propagate, but some will, and you usually get only one per leaf. So the potential here is, one plant for each leaf I cut. And I'm basically setting it on the surface of the peat moss. Oops. If there is some on it, it should be fine, but what's going to happen is it's going to retain moisture from being in this terrarium, and as the leaf starts to die, a new plant will emerge from somewhere along the leaf. Okay, let's see. This one's a little dirty. Let me soak it. Whoops. Okay. So this leaf is, okay, it's a leaf that hasn't fully opened. I like the ones that have fully opened, but hopefully we'll have luck with it. Okay. That's the other side of it. I guess I have a leaf there too. Okay. I may have been a little carried away with the leaves, but let's see. It was so hot I soaked these in water, but if you're going to plant them right away, you don't have to, because this way they're not going to be sticking to your fingers as easily. Okay, here is that piece of Akai Ryu that I cut the top portion off. So I'm going to actually stick it back here. Perfect. Yeah, I did get a lot of Droseras. There. Sometimes it's faster and easier just to use my hands. Okay, that's the top portion right there. And just slide off. Okay. You really don't want to bury the leaf, but it's hard to avoid getting some peat moss on top the way I did it by soaking in water, but you want to make sure the leaf is in contact with the peat moss, and you can rub some off. And also when I missed it before I closed the lid, that will help as well. Then this stuff I can just scrape off, put on the section where I don't have anything, grab some more. Okay, so I did have one. Well, let's deal with this piece first, then we'll deal with that piece. So I'm going to stick this here. Whoops. Okay, so here I have an Akai Ryu, a small one. And I'll stick this, I can put it close to the glass. It's so small and short, it should be fine. Well, I'm almost done with the spatulatas, which are good. So then this one, set that there, if I can. There we go. And this one here, oops. And I got skunk on me. Okay, plant that there. See what else I can dig up. Oh, and look, another Akai Ryu piece. I'll stick that behind the Sarracenia. I have about 3 or 4 spatulatas and I'll be done. Okay. I wish they all would sit on there as easily as that one did. This is that piece of spatulata that I cut earlier that came with another leaf. I don't know if I mentioned that in my video or not, the other segment, and that covers everything. This water, I'm not really going to put it in there. I don't want to create a dip. I do have a little gap here, but that's fine. Now I can, before I mist it, I'm going to just rinse off my hands quickly. Now I'll go ahead and give it a misting. And then all these dry areas will get wet again. Basically it got dry because it was underneath where I soaked. But it will get wet eventually, but as long as I spray them and the leaves are wet, I don't have to worry about it soaking out all the moisture, because you'll have moisture sitting on top of the leaf, and then when I put the lid on, it will be humid. And it should, within a couple hours be fully soaked anyway, so I'm not too worried about that at this moment. But to get at least the Drosera leaves wet so they can stick better to the media, so they can root better, is my concern. Okay, I'll stop before I get too carried away. All you have to do is put the lid on, leave it in a bright window. Make sure you don't have too much direct sun for a large duration of the day so it doesn't become a furnace in here and kill them off, but or overheat them. But then we'll see how these do in a few months. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe.